Eredin's Journey. Chapter 2. Division. Darkness. Coldness. It was everywhere. Not even a glimmer of light pierced through. Eredin barely remembered what had just happened. But slowly, he began to remember. Remember running through snow and rocks, sniffing blood and prey. Next came the blurred vision of climbing down a cliff side. Brother, I'm so sorry. He remembered now, and he wished that he would never have ignored his brother's warning of climbing down the cliff. The coldness seemed to run right through him. Slowly and almost unnoticeable, Eredin opened his eyes. At first, all he saw was a blur of small objects moving seemingly downward. Then, even more slowly, he could start make form of the objects. But how? There wasn't supposed to be snow among the hunting grounds of the ancient. Jerking his head up in surprise, the pain seemed to erupt up, taking forcefully hold of him from snout to tail tip. He let himself fall down again. First now did he notice that two of the objects didn't move. Ignoring the stinging pain that scorched his body, Eredin focused his eyes. 2 feet was placed in the ground in front of him. He couldn't quite make out what type of dinosaur they belonged to. "Rise, Eredin," an echoing voice called. Then Eredin understood. He truly had failed his brother, his clan, and his promise of bringing back prey. Is it time? He dared himself to ask, knowing the coming answer. Not necessarily, came the unexpected reply. Eredin could feel the faint touch of a claw against his forehead. When he once again opened his eyes, he was staring at the windy, snow-covered hills of the mountain he called home. He looked down, letting out a surprised shriek. He was staring at his own body, laying motionless among the snow. How could this even be? He was clearly dead, gone, broken. He knew it all too well. Yet the voice that called it didn't have to be so. Turning around, Eredin now gazed on a large raptor-like creature, its long, sharp and dark claws, longer than any raptor Eredin knew of. Its feathers were torn, withered, and black as the darkest night. Am I... Eredin began. Yes, Eredin. You are on the brink of death and life, came the voice. It was echoing, dry, harsh. Yet it doesn't need to be your time yet. Eredin took a step back in surprise. Surely it was his time to join the Ancient. The gods have spoken and agreed, the being continued. They have heard you and given you a choice. Eredin shook his head, unable to understand just what this dark being talked about. You return me? He asked at last. Do not take their offer lightly, Eredin, the being warned, and turned to face him. Eredin gasped, even though he knew well by now who he was talking to. Caranfir's long and dark-scaled tail gently swayed as the deity of death stalked closer to Eredin. I've been watching your clan for a long time now, so many of which I've been taken to meet the Maker. The almost skeleton-like raptor dipped his head slightly. His voice was hollow, almost like they were in a cave. The gods have decided to allow you this one chance. This choice shall mark history for your clan. Hopeful, Eredin dared to step forward. How can I ever repay such generosity? Kiranfair just shook his head. Dark feathers falling down for so almost melt away the moment they touched the ground. You may not be so thankful after you heard my message. My time here is limited, so I suggest you listen well. Eredin nodded slowly, and Kiranfair reached out a long arm. Look, and tell me what you can see. Eredin took another step forward. Kiranfair slowly reached out another arm, and then easily cut the feathers on his already outstretched arm. Immediately, sunshine and warmth embraced Eredin. The force of it hit him like a boulder, and it took all his might not to stagger. What can you see? Kiranfair asked again. Eredin could now slowly make out shapes and even forms. Cloudless sky, and bushes, a forever stretching land, and sand. He didn't understand any of what he saw, but he could clearly see it now. The great dune ocean. Kiranfair nodded and let his arm fall, the vision disappearing immediately. What does all of this mean? Eredin asked. Kiranfair began to fade as he walked away. Ask yourself, Eredin. You should already know what to do. May the gods be with you. You'll need them. All of them. Eredin felt himself grow desperate. Wait! Tell me! What do I already know? He shouted after the fading god. Kiranfair only shook his head. A choice be given. A journey to begin. Now I must go. You may return to the living. I have another I need to visit. Eredin! Eredin! Somewhere in the far distance, someone was calling. Eredin simply groaned. Then, with a jerk of his head, he looked up. He was laying on top of a large rock. Every bone in his body ached, and when he tried to stand up, he felt almost sick of pain. And then he remembered. He had fallen from the cliff, expecting his body to shatter at the impact of the ground. How strange that the gods decided to wait until he felt Kiranfair's grip before taking actions. Kiranfair's words still ringing in his head, he'd slowly get up and look around. In front of him, a large gap stretched. The mountains were split here, creating the snowy valley that, in the end, would lead out of Morse Mountains. Eredin! The voice called again, louder now. I'm here, Cloud, he called back, immediately regretting it. Arcing his back, he closed his eyes. The West be cursed! I didn't know it would be... He couldn't finish, ducking his head down and then plunging in, muscle first into the snow heap. He threw up what little food his belly had. When he heard footsteps close, he glanced up. By the Maker, I thought you were dead, Cloud said, his eyes huge like twin moons. Could he tell his brother of the vision? No. He would, but not now. I'm okay. Just empty, he said wearily in reply. And Cloud was kind enough not to question it, and instead he put Eredin's arm over his shoulder. Let's get you back to clan. As the two brothers slowly made their way back, Eredin felt slightly warmer, as if seeing the vision had given him new strength, new purpose. Letting himself give a small smile, he allowed Cloud to take a few steps ahead, and as he turned to face the slowly sinking sun and horizon. Thank you, he whispered to the wind, gazing up at the sky. A familiar voice echoed in reply. May the gods be with you, Eredin. Smiling more, Eredin picked up the pace to catch up with his brother. Soon enough he would tell him about what he had seen. However, as they turned the rocky corner and began to head into the cave that was their camp, a chilling shriek echoed among the walls. "He's dying!" The darkness of the night slowly emerged from its hiding from day. There was little food, but nobody seemed to notice their growling bellies as they slowly made their way into the large cave. Carved ages ago by forces of nature, Eredin had hardly been within these stone walls. Why should he? This was not his nest, nor would he be much welcomed. It had never hit him that this day would arrive, and yet he now could do nothing but follow the others into the dark. And there, laying in a nest of moss and twigs, an old grey raptor awaited them. Leaning over the now seemingly breathless body, the clan's young blood, Nara, let out a tired sigh. Eredin nodded in deep respect for both of her and the clan's leader. Nara had served for seasons, seeing both sides of life. The leader, now old, sick, and barely able to draw his last breaths, had served as long as Eredin could remember. Sarp were his name, and he had forged this clan. Eredin were but a young hatchling first time he had seen the leader. Then, proud and admiring, looking at the withered old scrummy being in the nest in front of him now, Eredin had to shake his head once. "You wish to see us, Sarp?" he called softly, almost thinking an answer wouldn't come. "Yes," came the unexpected, harsh, rough voice. Barely able to open his eyes, the old blood let out a grunt. Eredin couldn't place if it was out of exhaustion or pain. He only waited for his leader to give them orders. Yet even now, he knew what Sarp was going to tell them, and he dreaded it. Already he could faintly imagine seeing the ghostly form of Cranfear lean over the old blood's body. "Just a little longer," Eredin begged in his mind. Raising his head slowly, Sarp opened his mouth to speak, but were immediately cut out, due to sharp and merciless cough. When he opened his mouth again, the words were harsh and dry. "My dear clan, for so many seasons have I brought you nothing but peace and full bellies. Even now I wonder." His voice trailed off for a moment, and Eredin found himself clawing at his stony ground. "Why have the gods given us such problems?" Sarp spoke once more, this time slightly stronger. I wish I could tell you all that there is still hope, but I fear." Once again he trailed off, this time leaving a chilling silence. "I fear that this is the end, and I can do nothing but watch you all suffer. How dare the gods take me away now?" Suddenly, the old blood's voice grew sharp and toothy. "I have done nothing but serve my clan rightly, and yet they dare do this." Eredin closed his eyes. What place awaited their leader now, as he were provoking gods? Before he could say anything, however, Sarp coughed, and his eyes, now old and tired, fixed on the fading sunlight on the horizon. "No, I will not leave, knowing that you all will suffer and die." Letting a harsh, almost ghostly growl, he looked up at the stony ceiling of the cave. My clan will not suffer because of you! Eredin stared. Was his leader going mad? Surely provoking the gods now would only serve him a place in the waste. Suddenly, a coldness embraced him. It is time, Eredin. Either stay or leave. Make your choice. Turning softly around, he expected to see one of the angry gods' faces, but nothing but darkness of night met him. A cough brought him back to the present. Sarp's eyes were fixed on him now. The old blood shakily shook his head. I know that look, Eredin. My answer stand. We will not leave. Eredin fought back anger and frustration. Couldn't his leader see the failure of staying in the mountains much longer? But before he could make choice of his thoughts, the old blood let out a tired sigh. My clan, I leave you now. In seasons to come, remember me. With a final sigh, his head fell down and his flanks grew still. As if on an unspoken command, every raptor around the nest bowed their heads in deep respect and in honor. Eredin did the same, the bottom of his jaw lightly touching the rocky ground. I promise you one thing, Sarp. We will not die. The sun shone down on the rocky cliff. Clouds gathered slowly and broke apart in the sky. Eredin sat on top of a rock, gazing into the far distance, an almost endless wave of thoughts swirling within his head. The signs couldn't be more clear. The gods wanted him to leave the mountains, yet he also had questions. Leave the mountains? To some ancient knows where, place with sand and scorching sun? Who knows if such a place even existed, and if it did, there was no telling how far it was away. All of these and more questions were going through his mind, so much so that he jumped up when something brushed against his side. Cloud! Eredin growled at his brother. One day, I swear on Marker, I'll shred your scales. Cloud, always good enough around jokes and good-humored, simply shrugged. Sorry, I just, I thought you might like to, His voice trailed off. Eredin shook his head and moved to the side, letting his brother sit down beside him. It's okay, Cloud. I'm just thinking. Eredin said after a short while of silence. Then came nearer questions. Should he mention his sign and vision to his brother? To his clan? Surely he had to. The gods were unlikely to put him alone on this journey, wherever it led. No. Shaking his head, he decided not to mention anything. At least not yet. Maybe there even wasn't a need for it all. Maybe, given time, things would change for the better. Prey would start appearing again. The sickness would stop, and Era would be a great leader for the clan. Getting up, he let himself feel encouraged by his thoughts. Come on, Cloud. Let's try one more time and hunt. But as he led the way out of the camp, he couldn't shake off one feeling. The gods had taken notice of him. That much he was sure of, and they had given him a choice. Either to stay or to leave. Shaking his head, he'd focus on the path ahead. For now, at least, he would wait. He couldn't just leave his clan. Not now. The gods might hiss and roar as much as they'd liked. His clan would survive.